I stopped at the house of my friends, the Bustros family. Mona seemed shocked by my appearance.
And I said, come in. And I looked at him because he looked so strange. He looked spaced out. His clothes were dusty, and his face, he was staring. He had a kind of stare in his eyes. And I said, sit down, and he wanted to make a few phone calls, and then he had a cup of coffee, and then he said, I'm coming from Tal Zatar, and he started describing what he had been seeing, and there was this kind of smell of death around him. Really, it was something that you could not really define, but he was talking in a mechanical way. So he came, and then he looked at the house, and he said, can I go back to the garden? Can I go to the garden? So he saw the house. The house had been shelled. Glasses were broken. There were holes little everywhere. So he said, my God, you've been hit also. He was shocked, but he was already under shock. He was under the shock of Tal Zatar. And here he was, coming to a house which was for him a haven. And he sees in this house also destruction. He thought he was coming to something that was peaceful. And he suddenly realized that there was no real protection from the war anywhere.
There had never been any protection, not just from bullets, but from the deadening destruction of the human spirit, which made such outrages possible, which made more outrages inevitable. And no one was more ashamed than the Lebanese themselves, who couldn't understand what had happened to them. Walking one day in Beirut, I suddenly had to run for cover from an artillery barrage. Every door around me was locked. I saw a woman down the road use her key to open the door of her apartment building, and I rushed to the door. A shell landed near me, and I kept banging on the door. She let me in then, just before another shell landed where I'd been standing. She saw that some shrapnel had gone into my foot and I was bleeding. All her neighbors came out of their apartments, and they had me lie down on the floor. Then they began to apologize. This isn't Lebanon, they said. Please forgive us. There wasn't anything to forgive. They had saved my life. More importantly for them, they were preserving their humanity and their compassion.
I moved to England. I covered other stories in Africa, in Europe, in North America. The story of Lebanon, though, would not go away. I knew arms were pouring in, conflicts were unresolved. More people would die. And from peaceful England, I would return often as a reporter to document the life of Lebanon, which for the Lebanese had become a living hell. Somehow, Lebanon's people managed to preserve their pre-war love of life. In summer, there were the beaches, a chance to get away from the scenes of destruction. At the land's edge, it was sometimes possible to believe life was normal. But normality was something contrived, a way for people to convince themselves it was all right to stay. On my trips back, I caught glimpses of the old allure. I wanted to forget that Syrian troops and Palestinian commandos were never far away, and Israeli jets were ready to strike from the sky. Sun, sea, wine, people enjoying life. It might have been anywhere in the Mediterranean. My favorite bar in West Beirut, the Back Street, might have been anywhere in the world. It could have been in New York. Its clientele was non-sectarian. Christian, Muslim, Druze, they all came, and no one ever asked about religion. Here they could enjoy their evenings among friends. Perhaps this was part of the self-deception that made life bearable.
The nightlife, the Lebanese joy of living, no longer attracted foreign tourists. The only foreigners coming to Lebanon wore uniforms and carried weapons. Syria had thousands of troops, the Palestinians thousands of commandos. In 1982, Israel invaded. I was living in London then, and I could only read about it. But every time something went wrong in Lebanon, I wanted to be there, the way you want to be with someone you love when he or she is in pain. You know you can't help, but you just have to be there. Then someone calls in the middle of the night to say that in all the madness of the Israeli invasion, a friend has been killed. Karim Majdalani was an intelligent and committed young man. A Lebanese I knew didn't believe in the divisions which were tearing his country apart. He had defaced that part of his national identity card which said religion. He encouraged his friends and relations to do the same, and they all crossed out the word Maronite or Sunni Muslim and wrote in simply Lebanese. During the Israeli invasion, for no reason, some gunmen murdered him on the streets of Beirut. Karim's was one pointless death among thousands.
And there would be thousands more. Fighting in Tripoli in 1983 was proof that Lebanon had become everyone's battlefield. Lebanon was the scene not of one war, but of many. Israelis fought Palestinians. Syria fought Israel. In Tripoli, Palestinians fought other Palestinians, with Syria supporting one side against the other. The battle raged and devastated the city. It became a wasteland ruled by gunmen. This conflict had nothing to do with the Lebanese, but they were caught in the middle. They and Palestinian civilians suffered most of the casualties. They were powerless to defend themselves, to save their homes, and to protect their children. News organizations from all over the world sent reporters and photographers to cover all the battles, not only in Tripoli, but in the south between Israelis and Lebanese resistance fighters. Reporters on the ground wanted to explain the conflicts, but editors, especially in America, were demanding more than anything else stories about the new army in Lebanon, the U.S. Marines.
Where's Kenny? Does your work come? Inside! Back! Leave the door open.
Many of us were frustrated that the wars received far less attention than trivial stories about what the Marines ate for breakfast or received for Christmas.
The Catholic chaplain, Father Thomas Falkenthal, dressed up as Santa Claus to surprise men on the front line with gifts from home.
Merry Christmas. You got a good little boy? All right, here we go. They understand Christmas to be a special day of generosity, a day of giving, a day of gift giving and love. And what they're doing by being here, by being away from home, by being away from their loved ones, is giving a